Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're stepping way back in time to the digital Wild West. We're talking about the absolute chaos, the complete lack of regulation, and honestly, the sheer fascination of the early cryptocurrency days. To really get our heads around this, we're leaning on some incredible historical analysis from Ethan J. Monroe's book, Rugpulls Genesis. It's basically a story of utopian, pie-in-the-sky visions crashing headfirst into human greed and some pretty massive technical flaws.
Okay, let's dive into this. The whole core premise of Rugpulls Genesis is untangling this incredibly messy web of deceit in early crypto. See, Monroe argues that the exact same lack of regulation that let crypto be so wildly innovative and free, well, it also made it incredibly vulnerable. This is the first book in a series that really digs deep into how a genuine financial revolution accidentally built the absolute perfect playground for bad actors to thrive.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to hit 6 key areas: the promise of decentralization, altcoins and DeFi vulnerabilities, the ICO gold rush, hacks and social engineering, the community fights back, and finally, regulating the crypto frontier.
Section 1. The promise of decentralization, the utopian vision. Let's look at this timeline and see how this all built. Right after the 2008 financial crisis, people were massively disillusioned with traditional banking, and that totally set the stage for what happened next. In 2008, the mysterious Satoshi Nakamoto drops the Bitcoin white paper. Then, fast forward a bit to 2011, and we see the rise of the very first altcoins, basically alternative cryptocurrencies trying to do what Bitcoin did, but better. Then boom, 2015 hits. Ethereum launches and brings smart contracts with it, which literally changed the entire game. And that momentum led directly into 2017, the year of the insane global initial coin offering, or ICO boom. The frontier was expanding incredibly fast.
To really get why this happened, we have to understand decentralization. It's a system that distributes control across a whole network, replacing central authorities with cryptographic trustlessness. The goal here? Get rid of the middlemen. No more banks, no more big central authorities dictating the rules to us. It was meant to totally redefine trust by relying purely on math, but inadvertently, by kicking out the traditional gatekeepers, this system threw the doors wide open for bad actors.
Section 2. Altcoins and DeFi vulnerabilities. The frontier expands. A huge foundational piece of this new frontier was the smart contract. Basically, these are self-executing digital agreements where the terms are written directly into the code itself. To make this super relatable, think of it kind of like a digital vending machine. You put your digital money in, you make your selection, and the machine just automatically gives you your item based on its programming. No middleman required.
And this brilliantly illustrates the double-edged sword of this early tech. On one hand, you've got immutable code. It's transparent, it's predictable, and nobody can maliciously alter it once it's live. But on the flip side, because you literally cannot change it, you get unchangeable bugs. Any coding errors? Yeah, those are permanent. So if a developer made even a tiny mistake, that platform was permanently vulnerable to anyone who could figure out how to exploit that specific bug.
Which brings us right to the absolute biggest threat of the era, the rug pull. A rug pull is a fraudulent act where project creators suddenly abandon development and just run off with all the investor funds. This was the dark, seedy underbelly of the frontier. You had these highly experimental features colliding with super inadequate security, plus a severe lack of experienced developers. Honestly, it made it way too easy for scammers to just pull the rug right out from under eager investors.
Let's look at some of the major DeFi exploits that really define this wild period. You had the infamous 2016 DAO hack, where an attacker drained just a massive amount of funds through one little coding flaw. Then we saw reentrancy attacks, basically bugs that let attackers continuously drain funds before the system even had time to update its balances. There was flash loan market manipulation, and honestly, perhaps the worst of all, copy-paste code. Developers were literally just copying code from other projects without fully understanding it, which meant if there was one vulnerability, it spread like wildfire, breeding systemic weaknesses across a ton of different platforms.
Section 3. The ICO gold rush. Democratization or deception. Real quick, if you find this analysis valuable, please like and subscribe to Knowledge Lighthouse to help us bring more truths to light.
By 2017, the ability to completely bypass traditional venture capital led to this massive, insane frenzy of public fundraising. Let's walk through the exact tactics scammers were using during this gold rush. First up, fictitious teams. Scammers would use fake profiles or literally just steal real identities to completely fabricate trust. Second, misleading white papers. They'd pack these documents with incredibly complex, highly technical jargon to hide the fact that there was absolutely no solid concept there, completely tricking non-technical investors who thought they were getting in early. And finally, the classic pump and dump. They'd artificially pump up the token's value by coordinating all of this hype, sell off their own massive share at the absolute peak, and leave all the victims holding completely worthless digital assets. So the crucial point here is that scammers actively weaponized hype against everyday retail investors.
Section 4. Hacks and Social Engineering, the Bandits.
Now, it wasn't just bad code that lost people money, it was straight-up old-fashioned theft. Exchange security failures were rampant. These centralized exchanges were basically giant, lucrative honeypots for hackers. We're talking hot wallet vulnerabilities. Since hot wallets are connected to the internet, they're way easier to access. We saw centralized server DDoS attacks, and honestly, just incredibly poor patch management. The most catastrophic example? For sure, the 2014 Mt. Gox breach. Hundreds of thousands of bitcoins were stolen. It caused a devastating industry-wide loss of trust and capital.
But the psychological hacks? Those were just as damaging, if not more so. Let's talk about FOMO, the fear of missing out. It's that psychological urgency to invest hastily based purely on perceived scarcity. I mean, you've probably felt this yourself just browsing the internet, right? Seeing a countdown timer on a big sale or a little pop-up saying only 2 items left. Well, scammers deliberately engineered these artificial countdowns in the crypto space to force people into making completely irrational, rushed financial decisions.
And on the complete flip side of that, you have FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. This is a deliberate tactic to spread negative rumors and cause massive panic selling. Scammers would manufacture all this uncertainty, crashing the price of an asset so they could scoop it up on the cheap, or sometimes just to totally destabilize a competing project. It's a perfect example of the powerful emotional manipulation that runs absolutely rampant in completely unregulated markets.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how these social engineering weapons relied on timeless, age-old human vulnerabilities. They used the halo effect, creating fake, super trustworthy, altruistic personas so you would completely drop your guard. They used authority bias, straight up inventing fake endorsements from experts to look legitimate. They used classic phishing, tricking users into handing over their passwords. And they heavily preyed on optimism bias, taking full advantage of people's sheer hope for financial freedom. The crazy thing is, they didn't always need some brand new complex code to steal your money. They just needed to understand basic human nature.
Section 5. The community fights back, taming the frontier.
Okay, the story wasn't all doom and gloom. As the rug pulls and the hacks just kept piling up, the cryptocurrency community actually proved to be incredibly proactive. They evolved their defenses step by step. First, you had whistleblowers stepping up, exposing the deceit and coming forward with hard evidence of these scams. Second, watchdogs started meticulously analyzing blockchain data, tracing transaction histories to pinpoint any irregularities. Third, independent firms started doing incredibly thorough audits of smart contracts before they were ever allowed to launch. And fourth, the investors themselves matured. They started demanding transparent due diligence instead of just throwing their life savings at a fancy-looking white paper. The community basically banded together to build much better defenses. And this led to a massive, totally necessary cultural shift: resilience through transparency. The whole ecosystem shifted away from the naive, blind trust of those early days to a new, hard-lined motto: don't trust, verify. And honestly, this was the ultimate shield against the psychological manipulation and the FOMO we were just talking about. If a project couldn't be independently, objectively verified, the community quickly learned to just stay far away.
Section 6. Regulating the Crypto Frontier, the Horizon.
As the industry got bigger and bigger, the inevitable arrival of government oversight just became a reality. We started seeing very clear regulatory responses. Governments instituted anti-money laundering mandates and know-your-customer identity checks to weed out illicit activities. They started the really tricky work of the legal classification of tokens, trying to decide what was a security versus what was just a utility token. And importantly, we saw the beginning of global coordination to prevent regulatory arbitrage, basically making sure scammers couldn't just pack up and move to a country with zero rules. Now, these tools definitely aim to civilize the Wild West, but regulators are walking a massive tightrope here. They're trying to impose order without totally crushing the underlying technological innovation that made crypto so revolutionary in the first place. Which leaves us with one final super provocative question: can crypto balance innovation with regulation? Think about it. We've seen the wild utopian visions, the totally devastating hacks, the community's amazing resilience, and now the arrival of the regulators. So how do we actually keep the decentralized freedom of the frontier while making sure it's a safe place for everyone to participate? For the complete deep dive, own the paperback. Get your high-quality paperback edition on Amazon via the link in the description. Add it to your collection today. Please share this explainer and check the description for more.